So when I'm doing a sky scene, I always try to get real good perspective. A lot of skies and paintings tend to look real flat. So something that I find is really helpful in achieving depth in the sky is the same thing I would do for depth on ground. We always think of perspective being on the ground, like you're looking down the street, down a road, a highway, and the little dotted line gets closer and closer together as it gets near the horizon. Or railroad tracks, the lines get closer and closer together as it approaches the horizon. Well, if you're doing a layer of clouds like this, you see I've just got this blanket of cloud cover that I want to look like it's coming out. And so what I'm doing is highlighting the bottom edge. So since it's a sunset, I've just gone reverse on my light and shadow. You can watch my How to Paint Clouds in a Room video, where I really walk through the steps of, probably more detail than you ever need to know of how to make a normal puffy looking cumulus cloud like this. But when I do a sunset, I just use this bright peach color, or it's a light orange, but it's orange and white for the underside instead of the shadow. It's just reversed. But my point right now is that one thing that gives this sky perspective are these little detailed lines. This seems like a tiny thing that I'm doing, like real tiny details, but what this does is creates tight details by the horizon. And just like color has just how a color can have a gradient where it gradually fades, well, you can have a gradient of detail also, where this has real scrunched. See all these horizontal lines, how they're real tight. The detail's real tight, and your eyes really pick up on that by the horizon. As it gets higher, it gets wider and wider. All these lines, my shapes get bigger and bigger. So that creates this perspective of it coming toward you. And then when I do like the tops of these clouds, I make those bigger as they get higher. So everything gets bigger as it gets higher, that I want to look like it's on this plane right here. So that's what I'll do for a while, is just go along and I'll start with my yellows, where I've got, this is like a yellow and white mix, and I'll just hit the undersides of these clouds, just where it's close to the horizon. I'm just rinsing my brush. And the trick to doing these little things, if you wanted to try this, the main guideline is just making the harder edge, a sharper edge on the underside of each stroke, just like I did with doing the ocean waves in that video. But this is, all it is doing a hard edge. See, watch this line that I make. I'm looking for an area that has yellow in it so that I can demonstrate. But like, I make a brush stroke like this, and I'll keep going over the top edge of that stroke. So you see, this is a soft edge on the top side of it, where I keep the hard edge on the bottom side of it. So what that tells you is that this shape is curving like this. This is shapes in front of shapes coming out this way, that hard edge. So we make all these kind of rounded edges come down. This is just a good way to add real tight detail to the distant clouds, so that they have that look of perspective as they go back. I'll need to mix a redder and redder tone as I get higher and detail these clouds. The idea is not to go crazy with detail, but to create a consistent gradient where the detail gets less as it lifts up like this. And so it makes a real consistent blanket of clouds coming out that way. And then here you can see the same thing going on these clouds. Like, I want this to look like a second layer of clouds up high, and I didn't do a very good job. You can see how these are not a lot tighter than these up here. So I could really improve that by making these clouds smaller, making the details tighter right in this area, and then leaving these how they are with the larger shapes. So you see, it's that smooth transition, that gradual transition that gives it that perspective. All right, I'm gonna cover it. I was gonna do how to paint a sunset cloud, but I went and filled up the whole sky. Here's how I did these too. These ones that are already here is I have my red and yellow down here. See, this one is the red. This one's the yellow. More like pink and light yellow. You know, the real pastel Easter egg kind of colors. But this whole sunset is done with these, except for this blue here. This blue that you see there, the blues. Those are not done with those. So I changed the colors midway. But you see, I put the red in. I get some yellow and just start blending them together with these horizontal strokes. And I'm using a tiny old brush now because I'm working on this area real close to the horizon. But as when I get up to these higher clouds, I was using a bigger brush. But now I'm down to the details and I'm doing all right on time. So this is where I just try to go above and beyond. Make this sky look like something better than average, I guess. Yeah, these details really help. It's kind of fun just doing these horizontal blends of the yellow and the red. Because I'm close up on this picture. I'm not really stepping back and seeing the whole thing. So I'm just kind of letting the shapes do the work. Just letting the paint do it. Just letting it create whatever shapes come out as I just mix them together. But I am trying to stick with that principle of blending out the top side of my brush strokes while leaving the bottom side of the brush strokes sharper. That is the general rule that I follow across the whole underside of all these clouds, is that I want most of my hard edges to be on the bottom side of the brush stroke, each stroke. That seems like real tedious detail, but you kind of get the feel for it, and you can move along pretty quick just doing a brush stroke and then moving up a little bit higher to soften the upper edge of that brush stroke. And then it's not an absolute rule, there's a whole bunch of areas where it looks like the clouds are just kind of soft or more blended, where I didn't do that. Yeah, so this just blending these just creates all these different shades of orange in there, yellow and orange. You'll see that this gets more orange as it dries. As I put it on, it looks real light colored, but this paint, it always darkens as it dries. Look, I can just hold these buckets. Sometimes when I'm in an awkward spot, they're not very full. There's not much paint in there, so it's easy to just hold these. You gotta be careful doing this kind of stuff, though. It can real quick make a whole day of work disappear. See, I'm just going along, blending them together. I'll keep mixing different shades and putting those details under these clouds. Trying to make the shapes bigger as it gets up. And then, yeah, this one, I want this layer. I'm going to work on that too, making this further higher layer. Real tight on these details here. And this, I want it to look like kind of rain coming down in between these two layers. So I'm going to add some light to that. just like I did with this little highlight here. I want to add some. Yeah, I'll work on it.